Grisly crimes from past. The Black Hole of Calcutta. It was an inauspicious beginning to the British occupation of India, but an important one. Perhaps for some deep Freudian reason, the Black Hole of Calcutta is the stuff that myths are made of. It was the myth of the atrocity purportedly committed against innocent Englishmen and women by the Nawab of Bengal, Bangla Bihar Urishar Shesh Shadhi Nawab, Nawab Siraj-ud-Daulah, in 1756 that allowed Britain to take over Bengal and eventually the whole of India. The 7 Years' War had spilled over both into North America and India, where both Britain and France had trading concessions. The French held Hyderabad while the British held Calcutta and Madras, ceded by the French under the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle in 1748 in return for Cape Breton Island. However, the old Nawab or governor of Bengal died in 1756. He was succeeded by his grandson, who was both headstrong and vacillating. When he heard exaggerated reports that British was fortifying Calcutta, he besieged the city. After 4 days, on 20th June 1756, it fell. The foreign settlers were quite unprepared for the attack. Government Drake and the majority of the English residents fled to the river and escaped on board ships. George Holwell, a council member of the East India Company, and 170 others retreated to the company's headquarters, Fort William, which had been built in the early part of the century. Accounts of what happened next are confused. A truce may have been called, but fearing treachery, Holwell opened fires on the Bengalis. The outraged Bengalis then took the fort with some loss of life. Holwell was captured. The Nawab entered Fort William and ordered that the principal inhabitants to held overnight. In all, 146 people were held. There were talks, and the Nawab promised the captives his protection and good treatment. However, it seems that a drunken soldier killed one of the Nawab's men. When he found out about it, the Nawab asked whether miscreants were usually held. He was told of the fort's guard room, which was known as the Black Hole, a small room just 18 feet by 14 feet, between two arches of the outer wall. It was completely bricked in, except for two small barred windows that opened onto the courtyard. Usually drunken soldiers were imprisoned in there until they sobered up. At 8 o'clock, when it was already dark, the Nawab ordered that all 146 captives, including one woman named Mary Carey, be jailed there. It is possible that the Nawab was unaware of the size of the jail. It was a sultry Bengali night, and Holwell and his companions were crammed in like sardines. The heat was intense, and they took their clothes off. Hats were waved around in an attempt to circulate the air. The guards passed them water, which they fought over. There were cries and groans from those at the back who were suffocating. Some pleaded with the guards to be shot. Holwell sucked on his sleeve to keep his mouth wet. He later thought of drinking his own urine and considered slashing his wrist with a knife he had in his pocket. By 11:30, Holwell noted that nearly everyone was delirious. He witnessed the death of the carpenter named Leach and the Reverend Garvese Bellamy, who died hand in hand with his son. Holwell eventually collapsed and was pulled out from under a pile of corpses by Henry Lushington, a clerk, and John Cook, a company secretary. They carried him to the window where he recovered. At 6 a.m., the doors were opened and they were let out. The 23 survivors included Holwell, Lushington, Cook, and Mary Carey. A total of 123 were dead. Their bodies were thrown in a ditch outside the east gate and covered with earth. Later, Holwell would erect an obelisk on the spot. Cook and Lushington made off to catch up with the English ships that were waiting down the rivers. Others stayed on, but after another incident involving a drunken soldier, all the British were ordered out on pain of having their noses cut off. Only Holwell and some of the soldiers stayed, held in irons. That at least is Holwell's story. which he wrote down in a letter to a friend on board the ship that took him back to England in 1757. However, when Lushington and Cook reached the English ships and reported to Governor Drake, they said nothing of what happened in the Black Hole. The soldiers held by the Nawab talked to some Frenchmen, but none of them mentioned the Black Hole either. The source of the story was Holwell's letter home. His story is full of inconsistencies, and many doubted its authenticity. Robert Clive of India, was in Madras at that time, but on 2nd of June 1757, he retook Calcutta. Clive defeated the Nawab's army, even though it was vastly outnumbered his own, at Polashi in June 1757, then installed his own Nawab. This led to the virtual annexation of Bengal in 1765. In Clive's account of the conquest of Bengal, there was no mention of the Black Hole. He even referred to the Nawab as a man of courage and humanity, which was the general view. The Black Hole was certainly not used as an excuse for making war on him. In 1773, Cook testified to the Select Committee. Up until this time, he had remained silent on the subject of the Black Hole. To the committee, he confirmed Holwell's story, but then he was not an unbiased witness. Cook and Holwell had been friends long before the fall of Fort William. On one occasion, Cook had put up the bail for Holwell. The spoils of the Battle of Polashi had made Cook a rich man, and by then, the story of the Black Hole of Calcutta had become the principal justification of British rule in India. So, if official versions of what atrocity took place in the Black Hole of Calcutta are not true, what did happen? It seemed likely that during the Bengal truce, Holwell had ordered that the gate to the fort to be opened before he fired on the Bengalis. This prompted a massacre. A much smaller number of people than the 146 Holwell claimed were held in the Black Hole, and some of them may have died there. But as the huge loss of life was plainly Holwell's fault, he exaggerated its significance, contending that many of the men who had died defending the fort's wall had died in the prison. By the time his story circulated, it was in everyone's interest to go along with it. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and leave a comment, as it helps with YouTube algorithm to grow this channel. I regularly upload, so by subscribing, you will be notified of new materials. You will find similar contents in my other videos. Have a safe day. Signing off.